Hello everyone, welcome to Vitoucher's Guide to Retouching. My name is Vartan and today we are going to dive into the world of retouching and learn the techniques I use every day. Whether you are a beginner, advanced, or everything in between, I hope that this video serves you well. I'll walk you through the entire process step by step. And since this tutorial is meant for every skill level, I will be breaking the video down into 3 parts. Part 1 will be cloning and healing. This is where we build our foundation by cleaning up as much as we can with a combination of the healing brush tool and the clone stamp tool. Part 2 will be retouching skin using frequency separation, where we will be splitting the image into 2 frequencies, a high and a low. And part 3 will be the final segment of this tutorial, which includes my favorite part of retouching, which is dodging and burning, along with color correcting and final touch-ups where needed. By the end of this tutorial, I hope you have a better understanding of how to retouch photos like a pro. But before we get started, make sure to subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell, give this video a thumbs up. All right, with that said and done, let's get right into it. The first thing we want to do is create 3 new layers. This ensures we're working non-destructively, allowing us to revert to the original image if needed. So go to the create new layer on the bottom right and click it 1, 2, and 3. We're going to name the bottom layer as background, the middle layer as subject, and the top layer we're going to name hair. And then we're going to group these 3 layers together and name that group healing. Once we get our layers and the group together, it's time to address any blemishes or imperfections, starting with the background and moving our way to the subject, and then finishing off with the hair. I prefer to use the healing brush as much as possible over the clone stamp tool. However, there are times where I do need to use the clone stamp tool, and to kind of give you guys a visual for those who are new to Photoshop. The healing brush tool allows you to fix imperfections like scratches, wrinkles, dust, spots, etc., causing them to disappear into the surrounding image. So what that means is for example, trying to get rid of this divot right on this wall. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint right on top of it. And what that does is it looks at the surrounding pixels and creates a new seamless pixel and gets rid of that divot, blemish, whatever it is that you're trying to remove. In this case, this little bump that we have in the wall, not a divot. So that is the healing brush. Now, the cloning tool does the same essentially, but what it does is it copies pixels from one area and applies them to another. So think of it as copying and pasting. So for example, that same bump, but in this case, now we're using the clone stamp tool. What you do have to do with the clone stamp tool is you have to first sample an area before you start to paint. So because I want to get rid of that bump, I'm going to sample an area basically right on that line, right? Move up and start to paint over it. There we go. Pretty much the same thing, right? They both got rid of the bump on the wall in a very successful, satisfying way. In this case, both tools work perfectly. Now there are cases where you have to use one or the other, and in those cases when they do come up, I will bring that up and as to why we're going to be using it, but for the most part I prefer to use the healing brush because it creates quote unquote pixels rather than blatantly just copying pixels, like literally just copying and pasting. And the problem with the whole, what I have with the clone stamp tool is the fact that because it's a direct copy, right? So for example, like if I do this, so now it's literally just copying this multiple times, and when you zoom out, that just doesn't look natural. So, but there are ways around it. There will be times where you're kind of stuck, where you have to kind of do this continuation, but you have to also essentially go in there and clean it up where it does not look duplicated. So with that said, what I'm gonna do is I full zoom out, fill the screen with the image, and right off the bat, whatever first just sticks out like a sore thumb, that is taken away from the subject. And obviously in this case, the subject is the model sitting on the chair. So we don't want any distractions taking away from the model, the subject itself. So if you close your eyes and then open your eyes, and when you look to the center of the image where technically the subject should be, if there's anything around it that's like forcing you to look at it, you need to remove that. So that's why I start zoomed out first, and then once I clean it up, then I'll zoom in a little bit more and really go and tune up any fine details that I need to. So again, using the clone stamp tool, all I'm literally doing is just painting over what I want to remove. That's it. There's nothing special. There we go. Now, also keep in mind that depending on the photo, depending on where it's shot, right? So for example, in this case, this is a more of a kind of downtown warehouse living situation where it's more industrial. So you have like open brick, you know, like oh my god, scaffolding? No, scaffolding. What is it called? Anyway, you get the point. So where it's more of a like a industrial looking, so we don't want it to be super clean, right? Because then that's just gonna take away from the whole feel and the whole look of the area. However, it doesn't mean that it can't be clean. Like, so for example, me removing these holes and what off the walls, it doesn't change anything. It still looks like it's a warehouse, downtown living area. So keep that in mind. And the background consists of everything except for the subject. So even the chair that they're sitting on is part of the background. At least that's how I kind of situate it as. Okay. So for the most part, yeah. See, like these, I want to get rid of only because they're a little too in depth, especially on this one. You don't need to be that sore thumb. There we go. It's there. It's noticeable, but it's not shouting at me now. All right. Let's clean up the carpet a little bit, or the rug, I should say. That's part of the lamp. Let's get rid of these guys. All right. Now, obviously, the more cleaner it is in this stage, the better situated you are and you're into the next stages. But it doesn't have to be perfect, because we're gonna have to still clean up areas. There's just gonna be certain spots where, unfortunately, the clone stamp and the brushing, the healing brush, are just not gonna be looking as great as you want it to. So there's gonna be different ways, but right now we're just pretty much just building our foundation. So don't worry too much on, this area doesn't look good. Like, it's okay. Frequency separation and dodging and burning can do some amazing things when you know how to use it. All right, so we got rid of the obvious areas that we need to remove. Now we do need to get rid of this. I want to say, yeah, it's electrical pipe. We need to remove that. We need to remove the pipe continuation here, along with all of these cables. We do not want these cables. Now, what I'm going to do to get rid of that, because there's going to be, what I'm first going to do is I'm going to remove everything. So I'm pretty much just going to, it's going to look ugly, but then I'm going to mask it back in on the areas that I need to. With that said, I do not want to ruin this layer that I already have, right? So I want to do it on top of it. So I'm going to create a new layer. So by hitting Shift Command N, that prompts the new layer window. I'm going to hit OK. And now I can go ahead and remove what I need to remove without fearing that I'm going to ruin what I've already done. So the first thing I always like to do is I always like to hit the healing brush. After that, if it does well, I move on. If it needs a little bit of fine tuning, then I'll go ahead and use the stamp tool. And for the most part, it did great. Now, because it's coming into a transition where there's, in this case, the subject's in front of it, so there's a big break between the pipe and then now you have hair. So the texture, the color, the highlights, everything just changes drastically. So it gets to a point where it does something like this, right? Which is okay, but it's okay in the sense of we can work with that. It's not okay to say this is the final product, because nobody's head does that. So now this is where we switch to our cloning stamp tool. And here's a trick. Do not start. So if I'm cloning in this area, right, I am not going to start. I'm not going to sample this area, because that's way too close to each other. That's going to be just straight duplication of pixels. We don't want that. Instead, what we want is to move a little away from it. So I'm going to move up here. I'm going to sample this area. And then I'm going to come straight down right in the middle and go over my subject. Now I moved up a little too much, hence this line. So I'm just going to go like that. And there we go. So I'm going to hit this subject. I'm going to go overlapping the subject, because what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to create a mask. And then I'm going to first completely paint over with the black brush. So that way the hair is completely in view. And then I'm going to go in and paint back that area over the pipes, but not over the hair this time. And I did lower my opacity of my brush to 30, so that way I have more control. So that way I'd rather do a few brush strokes rather than doing one full and then having to go back and forth. So this way I have way more control of the masking. And just a quick keyboard shortcut lesson here, if you didn't know. So the opacity on the brush, stamp, wherever there's an opacity for the tool, you can quickly change it to, if you want 10%, you just hit 1. If you want 20%, so if you look at opacity, if you hit 20%, you hit 2, 30, 3, 4, 40, and so on and so forth. 8, 90, and then 0 being 100. Now, let's say you want something more precise number. Let's say you want 5%. You go 0, 5. Nope, I lagged it. 0, 5. 5%. You want 15%. You go 1 and 5. 15. I want 27%. 27. 27. So on and so forth. You get it. The flow is the same concept. However, you have to press shift to activate the flow. So shift 1 will be 10%. Shift 2 will be 20% flow. Shift 3 will be 30% flow, and so on and so forth. Same thing, 0, 5 for 5%, 1, 5, 15, and so on and so forth. So just a quick little lesson there on keyboard shortcuts, because keyboard shortcuts are very critical if you want to be efficient with time. And you want to be efficient with time because you want to spend most of your time, if not all, thinking about your next step on the retouching rather than thinking about, oh, okay, I need to change my opacity to 50%. I'm going to use this slider. Yeah, it's going to take you like a day or two to retouch an image. So yeah, so just learn the keyboard shortcuts, and I will bring them up as I'm using them when a new one comes out, but as we go on. So pretty much there we go. So that pipe is now removed. Now I know that there's some shading and weird, variation going on. That's okay. That's fine. Dodging and burning works like it does wonders when you know what you're doing with dodging and burning. So I will be taking care of that. So no worries. But my foundation is set. The pipe is gone. I don't have it anymore. The hair looks solid. Background looks good. Okay. So using that same concept, I'm going to use it towards the wires and the pipe in this place. This area is a little messy, so it's going to be very messy before it gets very beautiful. All right, I'm going to merge this down just to organize the layers a little bit more, because I don't need to go back up there. All right, and then same thing with this. So create a new layer, and this way I have my original background retouch layer, non-destructive. So I'm just gonna paint over with the healing brush first, like I always do, and see what the AI does for me. All right, I'm happy with that. And I'm just gonna basically go with the direction of the wires, and that's what you kind of want to do with the healing brush. You only want to paint over the thing, the area you want to remove, with a little bit of overlapping on the background. You don't want to do, for example, like if I want to remove this line, I don't want to do that, because now it's way too much information. It's gonna do some weird funky stuff. We don't want that. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be changing my the size of the brush, and to do so, you just use the brackets, the bracket buttons next to P, next to the P button right here. So the left bracket is smaller, and right bracket makes your brush bigger. So left small, right big. Oh, okay. There we go. I accidentally softened the brush. I didn't mean to do that. But however, to soften it, same thing. Your left bracket, right bracket. However, shift changes the softness, left being soft and right being hard. So I'm just gonna paint over the wires. Again, in the direction of the actual wires. It's kind of like grade school, you know, trace the dots. In this case, we're tracing the lines. That's pretty much what you're gonna be doing with healing and brush, the healing brush tool. That's literally what it is. So there's really no secret or anything. It's just tracing over it and hoping that the AI does what you want it to do. And if not, then we just got to manipulate it to do what we want it to do. Sometimes it involves different and multiple steps. So again, I know it's not looking pretty, but we don't want pretty at this point, at this moment. We just want to get rid of it, so that way we can then clean it up and make it look good. So this is an area I'm going to be using the clone stamp. See, that did not look good, but it's okay. So I'm going to use the clone stamp tool down here because there is a big variation difference break between the wall and the floor. So this is going to be because, and also because I don't have too much information to clone off of. So for example, if this wall, if this photo came out to like about here in this area, I would have had enough information to just clone it without any issues about worrying about duplicating of pixels and all that, because I'm sampling it from way out here. It's pretty far enough for the eye to not necessarily notice it, but because there isn't a lot of information and there's literally nothing on this end to use from, I only have just this area. But that's okay, because we are Photoshop masters here, so we're gonna essentially create our own. But in order to create our own, we do need to sample existing areas. So now, and again, I'm going to overlap my subject. I always overlap. Do not be scared to overlap. Trust me on this. I sometimes overlap more than I need to, just so that my finished product just looks just that much better. And then now I've switched over back to the the healing brush. And now I'm going to try to get rid of all the pixels that are duplicated. So whatever that looks the same, I'm going to hit those. And then see how like it goes whoop, 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 whoop. Like these weird waves. We don't want that. We want it to be a nice straight line. So we're just going to hit those areas now. Again, obviously the wall's not going to be perfect, right? But so like a little wave is okay, but if you have the same wave going across, that's just like, whoa, what's happening over here? What's happening is that's not what the image had. All right, so that looks pretty good. Now what we're going to do is, again, we're going to create a mask, but in this case we're going to completely invert it. So we're going to completely get rid of what we just did. But why? Because we're going to bring it back in more precisely now and making it look way much better, and most importantly, more realistic. All right, so using the brush tool with white fill, I'm going to bring my opacity down to 20%, so that way I have more control with the flow at 100, and I'm going to start painting over the areas that I want removed only. Now, again, I'm using a lower opacity because this is giving me full control of how much to remove, of what to remove, of what not to remove. And at the same time, it's also leaving kind of that imperfect wall look that we need. And I am changing the size of my brush according to the size of the wire, or the size of what I am intended on removing. So that way I am preserving all this detail that is actually part of the image that I can then use to manipulate my background even more, to remove these wires more efficiently. And the brush is also set on the softest. Oh, I guess it's not. It's on 50%. All right, so we're on 50. I thought it was on like complete softness, but you don't want to do a hard brush on this one because you don't want your brush strokes to be very blatantly visible. You want there to be a nice blend. Now, situations like this, it could get a little tedious, repetitive, but once it's done, once you're complete with it and you look at it, it's a nice self-satisfaction, like, wow, just removed this coil of unnecessary wires that could have possibly been prevented during the shoot and made your life easier. But hey, it's situations like this, the challenging areas in life is what gets you to learn, right? And this is where it divides the ones who actually try to do good over the ones that just try to do. So I've learned that whenever something that could have possibly not been in the photo, by easily just either unplugging or moving, I don't know, maybe in this case give the benefit of the doubt that it wasn't, you are not able to unplug it, but I'd rather do it manually so that way I learn, because from whatever you learn you're going to definitely implement on a different image. So it's just every time it's just practice, and every time is a process of learning. So I'm not complaining. I enjoy it. All right. So for the most part, we're looking good. Obviously, it's not perfect yet because we need to remove still a lot of ugliness in it. But, I mean, that looks even worse, wouldn't you agree? So, now, we did go over, right, our subject, or at least in this case, the chair. So we need to remove that. So a quick little, if when available, a quick little tip is if you go to your object selection tool, and then mode you want it to be with lasso object finder checked. What this is going to do is, in this situation, I think it's going to work perfectly because there's a big contrast between the background and the chair. I think that the AI is going to select this chair perfectly. Let's find out. Yep, pretty much did. which is exactly what we needed. And then I'm going to hit Command H to hide my selection, so that way I don't have this ant looking weird moving line selection marquee in my visual, so that way I can literally see what I'm doing, but the selection is there. So, and I'm just gonna mask out the area we overlapped. And if I hit Command H again, the selection's back. As you can see, I hit Command D, deselects the selection, and now we are good to go. So that's looking good. It's obviously still needs some work, but it's a great start to removing those wires. So now we're gonna try to fine tune that a little bit more. And then we're gonna jump into the subject. So now that I'm satisfied with that, I will be merging these two layers again, just to have a little bit more layer organization. This is definitely something I need to work on, because there are times where it gets a little too crazy, but nobody gets to see it except for me, so that's fine. Yeah, let's see if we can get in here and clean this up a little bit more using our handy dandy healing brush. All right, so that needs to go. That needs to go. So essentially now what it comes down to is just blending the side areas with it. So like I'm not worried too much about the inner areas, but like here, this line, that's what I'm worried about. I don't want that line to be struck out. So once that's blended, everything else just kind of comes in together. So at this point, right now though, the AI is doing some weird thing. So there we go. Okay. Duplicated pixels, get rid of that. Get rid of this line. So see that. Here's a common, there we go, see that? Duplication, right there, we don't want that. Okay, so I'm gonna actually create a new layer, because if you can see, what it's doing is it's adding, you see that? That right there, we don't want that. That's not what we want. So I'm going to actually be forced to start a new layer. And hopefully, yeah, now it doesn't do that. That's the AI. Sometimes it does things you don't want it to do, but it's okay, because we can manipulate it. See? On the previous, the line's still there. I didn't catch it at first, but I caught it on that last one. So we kind of have to do a quick once over, make sure. But it's okay though, because with the frequency separation, we'll be able to fix it a little bit more. I can clean that later. Okay. So for now, I'm satisfied. Oh wait, no. Gotta remove these duplications. At least one of them. There we go. Boom, look at that row of same pixels. Call it pixel row. Okay. Alright, I think, yeah, now I think I'm pretty satisfied. If there's anything I missed, I can definitely take care of later. So let's call this background again. All right, so now we're gonna move on to our subject, and we are not worried about skin smoothing or anything like that. What we're working on here is, again, taking out any imperfections, any blemishes, any scars, anything like that. So with that said, we're going to go in there and just hit these quick. And then as far as retouching people, this is something where you kind of would have a conversation with the photographer, the client, whoever is pretty much whoever gave you the job, as to what they want. What do you know, like if for example the model has tattoos. In this case, she does. She has a tattoo right here on her forearm. Are we keeping the tattoos? Are we removing the tattoos? You know, are we removing moles? Are we removing any scars? Or are we doing any body liquefying or anything like that? So that would basically be a conversation between you and the photographer, or you and the model, or whoever is pretty much giving you the job, so you have a better understanding. Because, you know, at the end of the day, it's people, right? So we got to be kind of aware of that. So in this case, the tattoo isn't an issue in this shoot. However, because of how it's placed, or because of how it's shot, the angle of the camera, the angle of her arm, obviously this tattoo is on the outside of the forearm, so that's where all the detail is. But in this case, all we're seeing is this little line and a black line that goes right on the edge of the forearm, and it just doesn't look good in this situation. So I'm going to remove it because, hey, camera angle. It could easily just been like, well, the arm was shifted and we don't see the tattoo. That's all it comes down to, you know? Because leaving it there is actually going to hurt the image because of the angle it's at. So now, because this is a hard edge, I am going to be using the clone stamp tool, because the healing brush does not work too well when it's two different textures and colors in the mix. So the stamp tool works perfect, and there you go. Tattoo removed. So if you made a bad decision on a tattoo, bad judgment call, and you would like it removed, contact me. Painless. I'll remove it in seconds, as you can see. All right. This is the cuff of her jacket. If we were to see more, like, so for example, if it went over the elbow like this, right? So if it continued out like this, like that, we would keep it. However, because it cuts here, right? And then it continues here for this one little area, it doesn't look right. It looks weird. From a distance, it looks like there's a skin deformation or something there. And that definitely does not help the model, and it definitely does not help the whatever you're trying to get out of this photo, whether it's a, you know, apparel photo shoot for, you know, the designer or the brand that she's wearing, or it could be, I don't know, whatever you're using it for. Definitely does not, because this is something that is drawing attention, negative attention. So we're going to remove it. Now, to remove this, we're going to use the clone stamp tool. And a lot of times what people would want to do is grab right here and then just go, you know, start painting over. I don't recommend that, because number one, I talked about it over and over again, duplicated pixels right here. Oop, see this? That's one, and that's two. Same pixels. 1, 2. Same pixels. We don't want that. We don't, especially that close to each other, you do not want. So, and also another reason is because if you look in this area right here, right, and then you look here, textures are different. Reason to that is because this lamp, the closest part to the camera is right here. This is the closest part to the camera. So this is going to be the area that has the most focus, and as it moves out, right, it's going to be less focused because it's a cylinder shape to the lamp. So with that said, we got to keep all of that in mind. So we do not want that. Instead, what we want to do is you want to, and also one other thing, because it's a cylinder shape, right? And your light source is coming from here, right? That's where your light is coming from. This is the brightest spot on the lamp, obviously. And then this is going to be your darkest, and this is going to be your mid. So with that said, so not only is it just focus, it's the texture and it's the lighting that is involved. So what you do is you sample above or below. In this case, below, there's not enough detail for us to clone off of. Above, there is. So I'm going to sample this right here. Or no, that one, this one right here looks better. So I'm going to sample here. And I'm going to go directly down here. And I'm going to start painting. What is that? Oh, do I have a selection on? What's happening? Why is it doing this? Oh. It's because I cloned here. Okay. Sorry about that. Let's do this again. Okay. So I clone here, sample here, start here, and paint over the subject like before. Boom. And then it looks like the alignment is a little off, so I'm gonna do this one more time. Sample here, come down here, make sure your alignment is correct. That looks good. And then boom. All right, yeah, that looks better. Now, mask, and using the brush tool, I am going to brush in, or brush out, mask out. Okay, my shortcuts aren't working. Thank you. Mask out this. What is happening here? My goodness, I apologize. Not really sure what's going on. Alright, here we go. Make sure we're on the mask, and there we go. My goodness. Alright, and now using a soft brush, I am going to now bring back what we just cloned. There we go. And that little, what looked like a skin deformation, which is actually the cuff of the jacket, is now removed and no longer in sight and no longer sticking out like a sore thumb. Okay, now back to the subject, and let's see if we missed anything. Not there, not there. Go to the foot. So with veins on the feet and hands, just like usual, I like to always use, my first go-to is the healing brush, and I'll see how it works. If it doesn't work, then I'll use the clone stamp, but it's something where we're gonna have to revisit a couple times with frequency separation and dodging and burning. So skin, you're gonna be revisiting a few times before we're done. And remember that. Because ultimately the whole retouching is on the model, and everything around it is just more of a kind of cherry on top, so just bringing it together. But our ultimate focus is the model. Okay. So, yeah, I didn't hit the hands yet, right? Yeah, I did a little bit, but okay. So we can hit this. No, that doesn't look good. Okay, that's all right. Hit that, hit that, hit that, and hit that. All right. The one last thing I want to do for the subject is the apparel, the clothing, what they're wearing. A lot of times, the article of clothing a model's wearing will be already fully pressed, so there shouldn't be a lot to do. However, there will be lines, like for example, pressed lines that we want to remove. Obviously, in real life, it doesn't look that way, but in a photo where it's a still, it stands out. So we're gonna do just a quick scan with for the healing brush and see if there's anything we can remove from the article of clothing, because we will be using frequency separation and dodging and burning again along with the skin for the article of clothing. Now, this looks pretty good. Right here, this line, that's going to be removed, but I can't do that. The healing brush won't do that. That is definitely a dodging and burning portion. However, there's one thing I do not like, and it's this right here. The jacket falling over the chair. I don't like that, so I'm going to remove it. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to go over the subject, the background layer. I'm going to create a new layer. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clone the background first. And basically what I need to do is kind of create this line right here. So that's pretty much where I'm assuming the chair back goes up against, which is, yep, that looks pretty good up there. To get rid of the jacket. And then start up here so we don't have too much, you guessed it, duplicated pixels. And like that. I'm going to go over it so then I can come in and get rid of it. With the mask, I am now going to paint where I think the chair, right there. All right, remove that. Now, create another layer beneath this new layer that we just did for the background. So that way we can just quickly and easily clone in the chair and we'll be good to go. Yep, that looks good. I do need to bring back the jacket. That would naturally be over the chair. So like right about there. There we go. All right. And just like that, the jacket is no longer over the back of the chair. All right. So with that done, what is this? Okay. So with that done, we are now going to move on to the hair. Hair to me is the most challenging because it's the most imperfect, perfect aspect. So hair is never perfect, obviously. But in a photo, in a still, the most perfect hair in real life still looks imperfect, right? Because there's frizz, there's flyaways in real life. But in photo, and you don't see these because it's moving. You know, the model's moving. You're not sitting here for what, 40 minutes, 2 hours, 3 hours, staring at the same position, same image. So your eye doesn't catch it in real life, but it still as it does. Hence why it's more challenging, because you don't want the hair to be too perfect, but we also don't want it to be imperfect. It's kind of a double-edged sword. But always remember, don't get too caught up. And if you do get too caught up and you feel like you're at any portion, not the hair, but just in any part of the retouching of any image you're working on any job, if you get stuck and you feel like it's not working, step away from your desk. Go grab a cup of coffee. I don't know. Go scroll the internet, Instagram, whatever. Get your mind off of it for like 5-10 minutes and then come back with a fresh set of eyes. Or you can move on to something else in that image and then come back to that later with a fresh set of eyes. And trust me, that works all the time. To the point where you're like, you might have spent like 30 minutes and then you come back with a fresh set of eyes and it takes you like 5 minutes and you're like, wow, I was freaking out over that. Where it literally took me 5 minutes, all I needed was a refresher. So the hair, what you want to do is with the, again, handy dandy healing brush, is any flyaways that are just completely going off in their own little world, wandering off, we want to get rid of it. We want the hair to look flowing with no breaks. And literally, just like we did before, we're pretty much just tracing over a line. This is something we did in grade school. Like literally, that's all I'm doing. And then changing size if I need to, but in this case, they're all pretty much similar in size. So I've been using relatively the same size brush. I did see some, yeah, here we go. That, okay. That was bothering me. See, like, these flyaways, these are no good. These are no good. These guys, they need to stay. Because that's what gives that natural feel. But these guys need to go. The overlapping is where we need to be careful. So get a smaller brush. Okay. Like that. And right there. Clean up some off the jacket itself. It's not that visible, but you never know. Sometimes a photo can be used on multiple occasions, especially if you're using it for commercial use. You never know what kind of scale it might be printed on. So always protect yourself when it comes down to it, because at the end of the day, you're the one at fault if this thing goes on like a giant 2-story building, for example, and all your imperfections of your brush strokes are visible. You don't want that. The healing brush also can and will duplicate pixels as well. So again, nothing is ever guaranteed. It's just a matter of doing and seeing what it does, how it works, how it looks, and then deciding whether it looks good to move on or if it still needs a little bit of TLC. All right, so now if I zoom out and we turn off all our layers of what we just did and go back to original, it's looking pretty good already. I mean, that's pretty solid. Like this, outside of the wire area that we still need to clean on the wall and this area, if this was a social media post, like it's pretty much there, you know, like it looks good, but it's not. So we need to still continue. Now, keep in mind that this is a photo shoot, so there's multiple angles. The model's moving around, so the hair is going to be in certain places where naturally it flows to, but in a photo it does not look good. And in this case, the hair right here that goes over the shoulder, that doesn't look good. Now, if there was more hair, like more predominant back here, that would have been fine. But because it's just this thin layer of hair that probably fell over her shoulder, that's not good. We need to remove that. And to do that, we're going to use that same exact technique we did for the wires and the chair. I'm going to create a new layer. Start off with the background first. I'm going to start up all the way up here using the clone tool. So that way, if I need to duplicate pixels in this case, but at least they're far enough where I can hide it. And then I'm going to paint over the hair. I'm going to go more than what I need to, so that way I can just bring back what I need, and it would be close to perfect. All right, so now turning off inverting the mask using the brush tool, and I'm going to do at 30% opacity. We're going to start to paint. And while doing so, I'm going to keep this natural flow right here, but I'm going to be removing this. That is what's going to be removed. I don't want any indication that hair is falling back behind her. At least, sorry, not necessarily behind her, but going over her shoulder back here, because there's obviously hair behind her. And I'm just gonna paint this in. Now, I choose to paint it in because, again, it gives me personally more control. I do like the fact that because they're brush strokes, and I kind of don't do like one long stroke, more like, intervals of like smaller strokes, shorter. It gives it a more natural feel, where you don't have to question like, wow, that looks like a pretty straight line there. You don't want people questioning. The best retouching is the one where you do not notice any trails and that the image was manipulated. And sometimes perfect isn't the answer. So I do realize, though, it is a little softer compared to a little bit of a harder brush and bring it back, and there we go. All right, so that part's almost done. Well, that part's done, but now we need to remove this trace of hair going back on that shoulder, because this isn't just done, right? It's like, wait, what's happening here? It doesn't work that way. We need to fool our audience. So I'm gonna create a separate layer now on top of the one we just did and do that. I know I'm duplicating literally what I said not to do, but in certain situations, like I said before, you just have to do things to make it work. But there's also ways to make it not look duplicated, and that could be opacity, so not showing as much of the clone as you need to, because it tricks the eye. That's pretty much all we're doing, is we're pretty much just tricking the person who's going to be looking at this for the 1 second, if that, when they're actually looking at it. So okay, all right, that looks much better. There we go. All right, we're almost there. Now I am debating whether or not to remove this strand or add more hair here, and I think adding would be better. And this is where I'm going to try something. So Photoshop, with the new update added, essentially in the beta version, implemented AI into the program. And now, since it's no longer beta, it's in the full version. I'm going to try this. So pretty much what you do, generative fill, select an area that you want, then you go to edit and then generative fill. And here it tells you prompt, what would you like to generate? Well, what I want to generate is more hair. So I'm just going to say, I'm going to be simple, and you want to be as simple as possible. I'm going to say hair. And then click generate, and let's see what the power of AI does. Okay. Wow. That's actually pretty good. All right, and it gives you some variations. My only thing is, I feel like it's a little too straight compared to this side, where her hair is a little bit more kind of wavy. Oh, there it is. Yeah, I think that's the one. Look at that, before and after. Before and after. Oh my god, this is amazing. Wow. Okay. Power of AI, man. Power of AI. Look at that. That is actually pretty nice. I'm not gonna lie. Okay. So that worked. I think I want to fill in though. I'm gonna try this too. Let's see. Go here, here. Let's see what this does. And then edit, generative fill, hair, generate. Let's see what it does. I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't like that. I can maybe use this though. I don't like the way it's masked, but at least it covers. So let's try this. So let's completely fill this mask in with black. And then what we want to do is I want to fill this area. I'm going to use a 30% opacity. And, oh, that's too much. That's way too much. Let's do 15. And then just paint in this area just to give it a bit more fuller hair. Oh, that's why. Okay. Alright. So, yeah, that looks... Oh my god, that looks so much better. Wow. Power of AI. Amazing. Okay. So that's that. We got the hair done. Got the hair did. Merge these. Call that background. Again, I like to stay organized with my layers, but sometimes it just goes a little too crazy. And then here. Call this hair. Do a quick, oh, see? This is why. Always do, when you think you're done, just do a quick scan. Alright, so I'm gonna do one quick scan over. See if I missed anything. Or anything new that's kind of popping out. I do not like that the lampshade connection is here. Maybe we gotta use clone stamp. So best way to blend the two. I'm gonna go here and then just go directly over it. And then mask it. And with the low opacity, low flow, blend the two and get rid of that line. There we go. And if I need to, yeah, I'm gonna need to fine tune it with dodging and burning, but that line is gone. And we can easily just say this lampshade was turned and that line that was here is realistically right behind that. That's it. Yeah, that's definitely sticking out, but with dodging and burning, nothing is going to be gone in a second, so. Okay, so background, and then I think we look good. We're good. Do a quick little, see if anything sticks out between the changes. This one right here. Quick scan, and we are yeah, I think we're set with this step. So the healing portion of the retouching is complete. Our foundation is set, ready for frequency separation, which will be in the follow-up part to this tutorial, which will be the second part. And then after frequency separation, it will be the dodging and burning and pretty much just finalizing the photo and bringing everything together. Okay, before we go, I don't like. Is this a curtain back here? What is this? What is this? Yeah, it's a curtain. Okay, I don't like this fold, so I'm gonna get rid of it. Let's get rid of it. Bam! Look at that. God, I love the healing brush. No sampling needed. There we go. Alright. Don't like how it looks over here. And since I'm about to hit the hand, I'm going to use the clone tool instead of the healing brush because I know that's not going to work well. Okay. Alright, so foundation set. This one I will take care of with separation, with the frequency separation. So yeah, so that's it for part 1, you guys. Thank you for sticking it out till the end, and let me know in the comments what you think, and look out for part 2 that will be coming up shortly in the next couple of days. And thank you for tuning in to Vitoucher's Guide to Retouching. I'll see you next time.